Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, the 11th day of February 2015. This is show number 1042. I'm your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me, whether you're being tuned in via the archive or listening live. We've got a sparse audience in the IRC chat room tonight, but thank you guys very much for joining me in the IRC. As always, you want to join us in the IRC, we encourage that. It's half the fun of the show. You can go to the website, front page of the website, yourmaclifeshow.com. Right there on the front page, below the video, the YouTube video, is a link to the IRC channel, which our friend Monty set up for us. You put your name in there, click the button, boom, you're an IRC. Simple as that. Nothing else you need to do. And the folks in IRC are really nice, and they will welcome you. Our official greeter, our IRC babe Sly, is back. She's not feeling 100%, but she's feeling well enough to sit up in the IRC chat room. So everyone say hi to Sly when you get a chance, and you're in the IRC, and wish her well. Hopefully she's feeling better very soon. On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. We're going to talk a little bit more about what Tim Cook said at the Goldman Sachs conference yesterday. If you were tuned in to Amplified this morning, you know we talked quite a bit about it, and we'll talk more because it was very interesting and very important what Tim Cook said about a wide range of topics. So please stay tuned for that. We're also going to be talking about photo organization. I was reminded of an accident I had many years ago with regards to photos and organizations. We're talking again. I know we talk about it on a fairly regular basis, but it's a point that must be pounded home to people about backups and how to organize your photos. Our friend Chiron sent out a tweet. Chiron, by the way, Chiron has been at Disney. Paul Driver has been working for Disney for 35 years. So congratulations, Paul. I was teasing him on Twitter, but I definitely will say publicly, congratulations to Paul. 35 years he's been at the same job. That's remarkable, especially nowadays, that he's been at the same job for 35 years. So good for you, Paul. But he sent along this tweet. If you're looking for a Valentine gift or any kind of gift for a Disney fan, use the code DisneyPal, Disney, P-A-L, to get, all one word, to get 25% off online orders February 12th to February 14th, so that's tomorrow to Monday, on orders over $75. So if you have kids or if you have someone who's a fan of Disney, check out the Disney website, and Disney Pal is the code to get 25% off $75 orders. So this is a picture of, for anyone who's listened to the show over the years, you know my hometown is Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I utterly love Halifax, Nova Scotia. That's a picture behind me of the old town clock in Halifax. And that picture makes me nostalgic for my hometown. But this past couple of weeks, I am so frickin' happy I'm not in Halifax, Nova Scotia. That's what Halifax, Nova Scotia looks right now. The little dark blob in the lower right, that's a human being. That's what Halifax looks like right now. That's how much snow they've had. They've had 4 major snowstorms in the past 2 weeks, very similar to Boston. Our friends in Boston are still digging their way out in the Massachusetts area. That's insanity. That's utterly insanity. And here's a picture of the reason why I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. That is Sly's stomping grounds. The North Shore. That's what the North Shore of Vancouver looks like right now. What are those? Crocuses? Daffodils? I have no clue. But they're beautiful. It's not even middle of February. And look at the flowers blooming in Vancouver. That's beautiful. That's why I live here. Is because even though it rains a lot in the wintertime, from mid to late October until mid to late March, it rains a lot here. But you don't get a shovel rain. Rain goes away on its own. And if it's raining, it means it's not snowing. It means it's not below 0 Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit. So that's a damn good reason to live here in Vancouver. Crocuses and daffodils, Sherry tells me those things are. Who was it that said they Ampersand had to run out and buy Powerball tickets. The Powerball lottery in the U.S. is now $500 million. Literally $500 million. That's mind-boggling. It's just after, and they always ask that lump sum thing or over your lifetime. It doesn't matter. I don't care. If I win it, you give it to me however you want to give it to me. Give it to me in dollar bills. I don't care. Ampersand says it's only $175 million after a lump sum and taxes. I'm okay with that. That would set me up for a very, 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 very long time. 175 mil, that would be a couple of lifetimes. I'd be good for a couple of reincarnations. I'd be fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Where was that? It's MacMan says, I just got back from a week in Phoenix. It was 72 at 6 a.m. when I got to the airport there. It was 27 when I got off the plane here. I was not amused. And New York is between storms. 30 degrees today, but DH is in Pennsylvania tonight. P. Booth, the Northeast, has gotten it in the neck this year. Yeah, it's been a lot rougher than usual. But, and this may just be nostalgia on my part, weren't these, for those of us who lived in the Northeast, whether it be in the U.S. or Canada, these are the kind of storms we used to have on a regular basis. At least that's what I remembered as a kid. But one of the good things is, for the most part, that area of the country has the infrastructure to handle that kind of thing. You know, they've got the snowplows, they've got the road crews, they've got the salting crews, all that kind of stuff. It's hard, but it's manageable. And I remember one thing back home in Nova Scotia when we were kids, you knew the storm was coming. You know, the weatherman said, major snowstorm coming. Schools were canceled. And you'd go to the supermarket and you'd buy a bunch of food, because my parents were my parents. They go to the liquor store and bought a bunch of booze and just stayed indoors for a few days. The adults, the kids loved it. We went out and played. We had a big tobogganing hill in my neighborhood that we'd all grab our slippy slides and our toboggans and our sleighs and go sledding. So, as a kid, it wasn't bad. As an adult, it utterly sucks, because you got to drive in it, you got to shovel it, you got to manage the weather. But as a kid, that kind of stuff is fantastic. And I certainly miss that aspect of it. And it's also pretty. There's very little that's pretty about rain. You know, rain makes everything gray and dreary and bleh. But after a major snowstorm, like the day after when the sun comes out, oh, it's beautiful. Even in the middle of it. For those of you who've never had the experience of being in the middle of a snowstorm, not a storm, but middle of it snowing, everything gets really quiet. The snow muffles sound. Everything's white, piled up on things, makes things look neat, because there's like 6 inches of snow on top of a mailbox kind of stuff. It's great. It's beautiful. I like the way it looks. I don't want to have to deal with it anymore. Hiker BC makes a good point. Mosquitoes can't live in salt water, so it's okay in Vancouver. Yeah, we don't have mosquitoes for the most part in the Vancouver area. We don't have a big bug problem. I think we got sand flies if you go to the beach, but you're at the beach, so shut up. I also want to send a big shout out to the Canadian flag. The Canadian flag turns 50 years old this year. It's kind of an interesting concept, the idea that the flag is younger than some of the people in the audience. You know, the American flag's more than 200 years old. The French flag is that old. The British flag is that old. Other major nations have been around a lot longer than Canada. We only got the flag we have in 1965. And it was kind of neat because there was a big national debate over what the flag should look like. What symbolizes Canada? What should be the emblem of Canada? And if you get a chance to check that story out, I posted it in the IRC chat room. It's up on, do a search for Canada's national flag turns 50 in Google, and this should pop up. And look at some of the other designs of it. And it's kind of funny, 50 years later, looking at some of the other designs, you go, oh, geez, I'm so glad they didn't do that. The Canadian flag, I think, is a very elegant. No, ArcSign Canada is not only 50. Canada was incorporated became a country in 1867, but we used a different flag up until 1965. We used a flag that was a variant on the British flag, the British Union Jack. So it wasn't until 1965 that we settled on this particular flag. See if I can. Here's some examples of other Canadian flags, so you can sort of see where the evolution of the flag came from, with the idea of the maple leafs and the bars on the side and things like that. So if you get a chance to read that story, it's kind of interesting. There were some vehement battles about it. There was a lot of arguments about it. But I think overall, I think we did a good job. I think the Canadian flag now is elegant and simplistic and kind of represents the country, with the maple leaf representing the land, the huge amounts of land that we have. The red on either side represents both the oceans on either side of us and the two nationalities of Canada, both the French and English. I think we did a pretty doggone good job on the Canadian flag. So I'm quite proud of my flag. I'm very, very proud of the Canadian flag. I look for it. Whenever you see an event or a crowd of people celebrating something, I'm looking for the red and white. I'm looking in the background to see who's like Wimbledon or the Australian Open. I'm watching tennis. I'm watching the background to see if anyone's flying a Canadian flag. British soccer matches. I'm seeing if there's someone in the crowd waving a Canadian flag. Cool. The Canadian sesquicentennial is coming up then. Yeah, it's 158. Yeah, in 2 years, Canada will be 150. In 2 years, Canada will celebrate its 150th birthday, anniversary, whatever the word might be. As always, we encourage you guys to send us emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Love getting emails from you guys, so please send them off to me. The on-air address is for tonight, for the show tonight. If you want to send an email any other time, you can always send it to Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com. But the on-air address works all through the week, too, so please send those along. If you're doing anything special for your Valentine this coming Saturday, let me know. Let them know. If you have any Valentine's wishes or greetings you'd like to send out, send them in to me right now. On air at yourmaclifeshow.com. I'll read them on the air. I think it'd be kind of cool, kind of sweet. Later on the show, we'll be talking about photo organization and what you should do for your backups and organizing your photos. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com about Tim Cook and his speech at the Goldman Sachs conference yesterday. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. In our phone now, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Doing good, Shawn. How are you?
I am good. Thanks very much for joining us. Don't forget, folks, Jim and I and Dave Mark from The Loop also did an Amplified this morning. You can find that on the iTunes store. We talked a lot on Amplified about Tim Cook and his speech at the Goldman Sachs conference yesterday. I forgot to ask you about this on the Loop this morning. When Tim Cook called you, Jim, to get some advice on it, what did you give him?
I said Heineken all the way.
That's right. Just get all liquored up and go and enjoy yourself. That's right.
Yeah.
Tim said some really interesting things. I think the most interesting thing that may have slipped a lot of people's attention is he says Apple will make the Apple Watch as essential as the iPhone. That feels like marketing speak to me. I can't believe they could really do that. Do you think they could?
Well, Tim has the advantage over all of us in that he knows what it can do.
Yeah.
You know, but the attitude is a lot different than it was with the iPhone. When the iPhone first came out, you know, Steve was more, you know, we just want to sell 1%. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, and Tim says that they'll make this as essential. We'll see. You know, if everything, I mean, clearly Tim is using it. There are other people at Apple that are using it.
Yep.
So they may see something in there that we don't.
Yep. I just, from my point of view, from what we know of it right now, the way it works right now, I can definitely see it as being a cool device and a fun little accessory, a fashion statement to a certain degree, but I can't see it as being as essential as my iPhone, if only because it simply can't do as many things as well as my iPhone does. So
But we don't know.
Well, true, but I mean, like I said, as from what we know of it, what we do know, I don't get the sense that it can do that. Certainly not yet. Maybe 2 years, 3 years, 4 iterations down the road. But right now, the way it's set up now, I can't see it being that way.
Well, and I don't think that Tim meant, you know, like in 3 months it's going to be an essential piece of what we do.
Yeah.
But, you know, he does seem very confident about it. But, you know, you don't expect him to come out and say, yeah, you know what, we made a mistake. This thing really sucks. I've been using it for a while. I can't stand it. It itches my arm. You know, I mean, he's not going to say that. But he does seem very, very positive on it. So you have to think that it's good and maybe better than people like me thought. I don't think bad. I just think I don't know because I haven't used it yet.
It brings to mind you talking about Tim Cook wouldn't come out and say this is bad. It brings to mind the awful announcement of the Motorola Rocker phone that Steve Jobs participated in. Remember that one?
I do.
You could see the look of disgust on Steve Jobs' face as he was forced to stand on that stage and talk about what was obviously to him an awful, awful piece of hardware.
Yeah.
It was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen because it was all Jobs could do was not to spit on this phone. He just hated it. Just the look on his face, he did not want to be. Somehow they managed to convince him or force him. I don't know what it was. Maybe they were going to donate a liver to him. I'm not sure what it was, but he was not happy to be on that stage.
I think that you know, the same with those little phones that came out that were, you know, compatible with the Macs and all of that kind of stuff. People were expecting an iPhone,
yeah.
And they were expecting a phone of some type. And, you know, they weren't done making the iPhone.
Yeah.
So Steve needed to deliver something. And that's going to be a tough spot to be at. You know, that need for the market to have something. And, you know, you can't say, well, guess what? In a year and a half, we've got this great phone and the touch screen. You know, you can't do that. So he did what he could, I guess.
Tim Cook said during the Goldman Sachs conference, this is what we want to do at Apple. This is our objective. We want to change the way you live your life. Now, they're not always going to accomplish that. They're not always going to be able to pull that off. But I love the idea, and I believe Tim Cook believes that. And I believe the vast majority of people at Apple believe that's what they want to do. That, to them, is why they do whatever it is that they do. Whether they're working on a widget, whether they're working on the next version of the iPhone, that's coming from the top down that Tim Cook tells everybody, and everybody tells everybody else below them. I think that's the key to the company. I've always been saying that over the years. That is the reason why Apple makes cool products and is successful, because you get the sense, using their products, that they want to make your life better.
I'm actually working on a story about that right now. You know, about what is it about Apple that makes them successful?
Yeah.
And if you look at things that Microsoft management says, you know, it's all about profit.
Yep.
But for Apple, it's all about product. And I've said before, I'll say it again, Apple fully expects that they're going to sell a gazillion of whatever it is that they make.
Sure.
And they will be really pissed if they don't. But that's what they expect. And they feel, I think, that they have put the work and the research into making this product something that somebody will really want. So people are going to buy it.
Something else that he said during the call, during the interview that was kind of interesting, he says that he doesn't necessarily believe that the best parts of the Apple Watch will come from Apple. He thinks a lot of the best parts of the Apple Watch will be obviously software, but that'll come from third-party developers. I like that idea. I like the idea of that, because even when the iPhone came out, a lot of us were talking about, you know, we can only do these things that Apple will let us do. We didn't know about apps. We didn't know about the iTunes Store, the App Store.
That's good. Neither did Apple.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no kidding. But I like that idea, and because what you've done is you've opened up the creativity and the originality to be not just people at One Infinite Loop, but people around the world who've already created really cool apps for the iPhone and the iPad. And that's kind of exciting. That's really kind of neat. I'm really looking forward to seeing what developers do with the Apple Watch. I think that's going to be, as Cook says, the most exciting part of the whole thing.
At this point, with these hardware devices that Apple has, it's Apple's job to build a powerful piece of hardware. Did you get stabbed again?
I just sneezed. I'm sorry.
Oh. And then all of a sudden you were quiet. I thought maybe you were dead on the other end of the. It's Apple's responsibility to make a powerful piece of hardware that will be able to run, you know, whatever developers can come up with. It's their responsibility to make the APIs available, as many as possible, that developers can use. Yeah. And while doing that, it's their responsibility to make this all safe and secure.
Yeah.
And that's what their responsibility is. The apps that Apple puts out and gives away for free, you know, like really good word processors and things like that, that's bonus stuff. You know, I mean, that stuff is great to have. And, you know, it shows developers sometimes a good way to go about doing things. It also shows developers, you know, ways that they can break the rules, but they're not allowed to. Only Apple is. But you know, there's a lot of great things that Apple can do. But I see Apple's role in this whole thing as being very precise. You know, the things that they are responsible for. If you want to do some apps on top of that, that's gravy. But you're going to get those other things down first, and then let developers go at it. Developers will come up with some really smart things.
Yeah, absolutely. The only false note I found in Cook's piece, and he's not usually a false guy. I don't really get a sense that, like Phil Schiller, everything that comes out of Phil Schiller's mouth, in my opinion, is marketing, is marketing driven, and that's okay. It's his job. But I don't get the sense from Cook. I think Cook is more of a straight shooter. Except he took some time during the interview to point out that there were a lot of men in the building, in the interview, or in the audience, but not enough women. He said, I see too many men in the audience. You need more women and more diversity. The problem is he's not eating his own dog food in this. You know, you look at Apple's executive profiles page, And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 people on that list. And 12 of them are middle-aged white guys. There's only one minority. I don't think Apple can go around talking about diversity when their house isn't very diverse either. Do you agree with me on that?
Well, I think Tim has been trying to change that.
Agreed.
But I still hold that if you have a CEO that isn't afraid to hire the best person for the job, then it shouldn't matter who that person is. If it's a skin color, or if it's sexual orientation, or if it's gender, or it doesn't matter. If the best person to make money for Apple is being hired, then I'm all good. I think it's great.
But that being the case, then he can't call out those people at the Goldman Sachs conference, because they very well may be, even though it's a room full of middle-aged white guys, they may be the best people for their job. So he shouldn't be calling them out.
Well, there you go.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying, is that it's kind of a false thing, because I'm sure that's what a lot of people would say. And Brian Monroe in the RC chat room said the exact same thing. He said, "That's good, Shawn, if they are the best people for the job." I agree with you, but if the best people for the job are all middle-aged white guys, don't point to a bunch of other middle-aged white guys and say you need to bring in more minorities and women.
Especially when you are a middle-aged white guy
Exactly.
yourself.
That's right. So it's kind of, Our friend Arksine in the IRC chat room has got a great question. Please get Jim's reaction to this point of view. Quote, Apple is becoming so big, valuation and economic footprint. Are Apple's investments, such as the $850 million solar energy project, going to start affecting the economy, society, as much as investments by state governments or even the national government?
I think it depends on what country you go to, but yeah, it certainly could.
Yeah.
I mean, Apple is basically has its own planet right now.
Yep.
I mean, I think what Apple is doing for the solar farm is, I think that they're leading the way, and I think that's very important for them to do. So, you have people yelling all the time about Apple and its money and give your money away and do all. They can't do that because they're a publicly traded company. But what they can do is invest in the future, not only the future of Apple, but the future of the country. So, right now they're doing it here. Who knows? They may have another solar farm sometime. Well, they won't have a solar farm in Ireland and England because there's no sun there. So,
or Canada.
Or Canada. There's no sun in those places, so you can't have a solar farm. But there may be, you could say in a year or two, there's going to be a solar farm in Poland or in France, or, Apple can do things to enhance life, environment, everything else. So why shouldn't they do that? There's no reason why they shouldn't, if that's going to be beneficial to the company itself. Now, somebody may say, well, why not take that $850 million and feed kids?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that doesn't help the bottom line of Apple. And like it or not, Apple is a company that has to make money. And again, if Tim does things that go against making a profit, then he can be held liable for that. He can't just go dip in his coin jar in his office and start spending cash. He has to answer for that.
It can be easily argued, Mark Mack points out in the IRC chat room, that it already has. An article says our gross domestic product would have been far less without Apple. I don't know about far less. The GDP of America is in the trillions of dollars. But it certainly is already affecting the economy. You can't make the kind of profits and generate the kind of revenues that Apple does without it affecting economies on both a large and a small scale. The question might be better posed is, what happens if Apple starts to use their powers for evil and not good? What happens if they start demanding concessions. What happens if Apple turns into an NFL football owner that says, you build us a new campus or else we're moving our and that's kind of what Steve Jobs intimated when he went in front of the Cupertino City Council to get permission to build their new headquarters. He kind of said, we want to stay in Cupertino, and saying to them, hey, our tax dollars support this city. If you don't give us the concessions or the permission to do this, we'll move our headquarters somewhere else to another city that wants it.
There was a big difference, though. I mean, that you're talking about doing evil, and I understand what you're talking about. What Steve was talking about is we have bought these parcels of land, and this is where we want to build, and we want to stay in this city. And they needed some concessions in order to make that happen. And I watched that video. It was years ago now, and the people of the town council said, "Are you going to give us free Wi-Fi like Google did for Mountain View?"
Yep.
And Steve said, "Sure, we'll stop paying our taxes and we'll set up free Wi-Fi for you."
I love that. I loved him saying that. It was great.
And the town councilors just said, no.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. We'll do with our own Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean,
so there's a big difference in that. Now, if Apple does start getting out of hand, I think that there's still some recourse for the government. I mean, there have been some very powerful companies, oil companies over the years. What was the Bell years ago that got broken up, and Standard Oil, and Microsoft.
Almost, yeah.
So now you have Apple, and I would wonder, and I don't know this, were there any environmental things or social economic things that those other companies did to help the environment or help unemployed or help whatever that Apple is currently doing? I don't know. Maybe the Rockefellers did all kinds of stuff, and they still ended up on the short end of the stick. Maybe somebody out there knows. I don't.
Well, I do know that
right now, when you look at Apple spending almost $1 billion on solar power, and the ability for the power to do 60,000 homes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's quite substantial. Now, keep in mind, it's also doing Apple's new plant and our campus and its old campus, and the other half of Cupertino that Apple owns.
Yeah.
So I think this gives the U.S. government something to point to other companies and say, why don't you do something like this?
Yeah, I agree.
You don't have to spend $1 billion because, Dell doesn't have $1 billion extra dollars. I think he's probably going back to his dorm room any day now. But, it's, and that's what we said about Greenpeace too. Greenpeace kept hammering on Apple, and the only reason they hammered on Apple is because Apple was the only company that made all of their environmental studies accessible.
Yeah.
Nobody else did.
That's right.
So why not? They've made big gains. Why not leave them alone now and go hammer on the companies that aren't giving you the data? So.
Greenpeace did say that they were very happy with the investment that Apple was going to do in solar power. It is going to be interesting to see, because at some point, maybe even now, Apple will have the power to push around various levels of government. I don't know if it's possible on a national scale, but certainly possible on a city scale. I don't know if it'll be possible on a state scale, but I don't think they will. I think that at least the Apple that we know now is a good corporate citizen and is doing what they can, again, like you said, considering the bottom line and what's good for the company, and then they're looking to do what they can for their various communities, both their local community and their city community and state and national communities. I don't think that's going to be a concern for Apple. One of the interesting things that Cook said that I don't think anyone's really mentioned, Cook said his credit card has been stolen 3 times. How much?
Really?
I wonder how much that has to do with Apple Pay, with the way Apple Pay works, with the fact that there is Apple Pay. Do you think that might be one of the reasons why Apple Pay was created? Was because Tim Cook would have done something like Steve Jobs and said, "Here, I have this problem, fix it," like Keynote. People may not realize that the Keynote app was created for Steve Jobs. They had an audience of 1 because
he said that when he introduced it, that it had a beta tester of 1.
Of 1, exactly. He told the guys, the PowerPoint isn't cutting it for me. I need something better. And everyone at Apple freaked out. It's like, oh, shit, the boss wants a new PowerPoint. And they created it for him, and then he released it to everybody else. I wonder if Apple Pay is like that. That Tim Cook said, look, screw this. I'm trying to get my credit card stolen. Fix this. You guys figure out some way to fix this.
Well, it's something that a lot of people have gone through, and it's, when you're the CEO of the most powerful company in the world and you have the resources to be able to fix something like that, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. There was an interesting story, and I don't say this very much or lightly, an interesting story at 9 to 5 Mac. Everyone knows, you follow me on Twitter, I think most of the time those guys are morons. But they've uncovered a story that Apple is threatening to ban iPhone and iPad accessory makers that design products based on leaks. Did you read the story?
I heard about it. I didn't read it.
It's interesting. There's 2 sides to it, too. I mean, one of the things that Apple is saying is, everyone knows that most of the leaks coming out of Apple are by third parties. They're not coming out of Cupertino. They're coming out of China. They're coming out of the folks who make the products for Apple. Whatever company makes the case or the back of the iPhone, then they leak that to a case manufacturer. And the case manufacturer, we'll have iPhone 7 cases available day of launch. It's because they're basing them on these leaks. It can be argued that some of these case manufacturer companies are encouraging these kinds of leaks. They're paying for these kind of leaks. What Apple has said is, if we find out you're doing this, if we find out you're basing product designs on leaked information, we're cutting you off from the Apple Store, both the online store and the retail environment. And that sounds like a good idea, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can see why Apple's doing it, but what difference does it make? Because we've known Apple at the very last minute to make, a few millimeter change in the way that the headphone jack is placed.
Yep.
And that screws up all the cases. So why not let these people just blow through all their money? And, if that's what they want to do, then they're going to get bit.
The problem is, from the vendor point of view, is that if they don't get this stuff early, it takes them, say, 3 months. Having worked with the guys at Griffin and Nashville, I know, it takes between the time they get, whether it's a leak or whether it's an official product, from the time they get that product, takes them about 2 to 3 months to design, develop, test, and manufacture new cases. So
okay, well, that's not going to happen.
Exactly. Then that's the problem, because what happens is Apple's going to be selling cases day of, so Apple gets a leg up on its own accessory manufacturers.
But what's going to happen if Apple leaks the specs to this? Then they're going to be leaked to the press.
Yep. Because
we know that these people will do it because they've done it in the past. So vendors, I mean, look at ATI. Remember when ATI leaked the press release the night before the keynote,
yes.
Saying that the new Mac Pros or whatever they were, Mac G4s, were going to have ATI cards.
Yeah.
Well, everybody knew the specs. I mean, there was no sense in Apple even showing up to their own keynote.
Yeah.
Except Steve pulled them out.
A lot of folks don't know that full story, folks. This happened in a Macworld, New York, and the day before, the ATI folks, either accidentally or on purpose, or because they're stupid, put out a press release saying Apple will announce new product tomorrow, and we're proud to say that ATI graphics cards will be in every one of the new Macs. Steve went ballistic, and I was on the show floor that evening, and I saw Apple employees in a panic running into the black cube And I heard from a friend they were pulling all the ATI cards out of the new Macs that were in there and putting in NVIDIA cards. Was it NVIDIA? I think it was NVIDIA cards.
It was NVIDIA.
And the next day, Steve Jobs never mentioned ATI on the stage.
Yep.
He just cut their throat. Or he just killed that baby right there on the spot. He didn't laugh it off. He didn't say, oh, you probably heard the news. He just went, bam, you guys are done. Yep. And that's kind of what Apple's doing here. They're saying, if you guys screw us on this, we're going to screw you right back.
Well, I don't know how it's screwing Apple by them doing that, to be honest with you. I mean, if I hear that you're doing a new thing and I want to make a case for it, and I hear through, who I know to be a trusted source that here's the dimensions of it, and I can mold one and get some manufactured for launch day, then why wouldn't I do that? If you change it, then I'm screwed. If you don't change it and it's right, then I've made a good investment.
It screws Apple from the point of view that it allows people to know kind of when the next iPhones are coming out. We already know that. But it also lets them know. It takes away some of the magic of the next version of the iPhone. Even though it's just the size, we know it's going to be thinner, or we know it's going to be wider. It's not a huge deal, but it does. Apple hates losing any of its magic when it comes to their product announcements. But like I said, but not knowing that information screws those manufacturers, because there's a 3-month period of time after the device is on the market, and that's the sweet spot for a lot of people when they buy it. Well, they're not going to buy Griffin cases. They'll buy an Apple case instead.
Then go make cases for Android phones.
Now you're just being mean. What are you gonna be like that for?
I don't know. I mean, they sold 75 million phones in a quarter.
Yes.
That seems to be, they weren't all bought in the first 2 days.
True.
So there's 90 days in there that people can go buy a case. They don't have to buy it when they check out. They can go back and buy it. So, if there's cases that are going to be available, then people will buy those cases. If Apple has proven already that people, other vendors and everything, leak information, so they can't give it out. So if your choice is to wait or to not make them, then there you go.
Yeah.
There's your choice. I mean, I don't see what it hurts myself by these people taking a chance. They take a chance on the molds. They take a chance on manufacturing.
Yep.
I don't know how that hurts Apple, because the information is all over the web anyway about here's what the new iPhone dimensions are. Well, it's out there. How does it hurt if a manufacturer starts making cases for it? May not be right, but how does it hurt? It's no money out of Apple's pocket.
The next time I hear anyone talking about Android market share, I'm going to say this to them. This is from the New York Times. I'll read this New York Times headline to them. That's all I have to do, and that's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to walk away from the conversation. You ready? Here it is. Apple grabs 93% of the handset industry's profits. Done.
Yeah.
Done.
That's it.
If you ever need proof that market share does not matter a damn bit, 93% of the profit goes into Apple's pockets.
Well, and if you take a look at AT&T's website, which I did the other day because I saw a sign, so I went looking for it on AT&T's website, and sure enough, it was there. With an LG, you buy an LG smartphone,
yep,
and put zero down. So what's that, free? They will give you an LG tablet for 99 cents. So basically, you go into AT&T, sign up for a plan, you get a smartphone and a tablet for $1.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There can't be any real value in those things.
Well, exactly it. So I was talking to my parents on the phone, and I was telling them about this. And Dad said, so if they have that kind of a deal, what kind of a deal will Tim Cook give me?
Yeah, that's right.
And I said, well, if you go in and you buy an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus at full price, Tim will give you the opportunity to also buy an iPad at full price.
Yeah.
And that's the deal that you get. So just pay full price for everything. You know, they clearly, these companies have no value in the products that they produce. Now, I'm actually a fan of LG products. I like LG TVs, most especially. Thank God I don't like Samsung TVs. But I like LG TVs. So, but in order to move inventory, they have to give it away. That's the only way that they can do it. And they're not the only company doing that. Other companies are doing it too. And with all of that happening, Apple still sold 75 million phones and 24.5 million tablets.
Yep. I was having this discussion with a friend over the weekend, and we were talking about the Apple Watch, and it was very interesting to see how excited she was about the Apple Watch. I showed her the videos, and she went, "Oh, that's really good. Can I do this? Can I do this?" She was much, much more excited than I was. I thought that was kind of interesting. But one of the things she said, she's not a Mac person. She's a PC user. She has an iPhone, but she doesn't use a Macintosh. And one of the things she said was, "So when will they go on sale?" I said, "Well, Apple says that they'll be on sale in April." She said, no, when will the price drop? I said, "Sweetie, it's not going to drop for at least a year." "Why not?" I said, "Because Apple doesn't put things on sale." "Why not?" "They don't have to." There's no need for there's not going to be a 99-cent Apple Watch sale ever.
No, ever.
Not going to happen.
Not even in a year.
It's not going to be. There's never going to be a 2-for-1 sale. There's never going to be a buy one get one sale. It's not going to happen ever.
No, they don't need to.
They don't need exactly that way, because as I've always said, their products are so desired and wanted. Having a sale would lose the money. If someone's willing to give you $200, why take $150 from them? That makes no sense economically, financially, from a corporate point of view, from the capitalism point of view. It makes zero sense to give them $50 back when you know someone's going to pay $200 for your product.
People are willing to line up for days. And I'm not talking about those stupid people that go out for publicity. I mean the actual people that will show up 2 days before an event, a launch, and line up to get the product. You know, it's special. It really is. Other companies kill for that.
Yep. And finally, we'll sound off on this note. Up on loopinsight.com, Jim has posted a bit of a story about the Loop magazine. Jim, I know you did this on Amplified this morning, but I want you to do it again for the audience tonight. I know you had a good explanation. So give the audience an idea of what's going on with the Loop magazine.
So the Loop magazine kind of fell off its wheels. In mid to late last year, and it's mostly because of a little personal crisis that I was going through. And,
yeah. We don't care about your personal problems. Move on.
And still am, but this is what led to it. And I realized in January that I've got to make this work, because I believe that the magazine app is the best app out there, and I believe that the content is among the best in newsstand.
Yeah.
Now, Apple doesn't give a shit about newsstand. We know that, but I like this app, and I like the content that's in it. So it's something that I want to make work, and I know that a lot of subscribers have since then have fallen off because it wasn't updated regularly, and I understand that. But now I'm asking them to come back, and I'm working on now making it monthly. So there's going to be, instead of 4 or 5 stories every 2 weeks, there's going to be 8-10 stories every month, and I'm working on the first monthly one now, and it'll be out. Well, should be finished by the end of this week. So, I just, I know I have a lot to prove to people, but I'll do that and, keep going.
When you say that the Loop magazine software is the best, you're not talking about the Loop magazine itself, although it's wonderful. You're talking about the behind the scenes software, right? The stuff that you use to create the magazine. What software is that?
Well, it's from Chris Harris and Mateus in London, and they made this app from a platform that they have called Glide. Mm-hmm. It's not even public, but they built this for me, and I based the magazine on that. So the magazine app itself is very interactive with video, with images, and it moves and zooms, and it's very fluid, and I really, really like the app. And believing in it that much, I decided that it needed another go.
As Jim says on the Loop story, he says, although I have no right to ask for it, I need your support to make the magazine successful. This is the kind of thing that is important from the point of view of, if we don't support the folks that we like hearing from and reading their stories, they'll go away. If you don't support your favorite podcaster, your favorite writer, your favorite website, they'll go away. TUAW, Macworld, Mac User, those are all big corporate things. And a lot of those folks are filtering down into doing their own thing, where they don't got to be beholden to a corporate boss. I started it 21 years ago when I started doing Your Mac Life. I got fired from every corporate job I ever had and started doing something on my own. And it's hard. It's very, very hard. And people who stick it out for any period of time deserve, and you like them, deserve your support. So if you, as Jim says, if you let your subscription subside to the Loop, resubscribe. If you've never subscribed to the Loop, subscribe to the Loop. As Jim says, he's going to work hard to make it a success, and it's been very, very good. And as you said, Jim, it's not just a techie, geeky magazine, is it? You got a whole bunch of different stories.
Yeah, it's there's really no boundary on what people can talk about as long as it's an interesting story. And I've had people talk about all kinds of things, like being a fan at an English football club, and David Charche wrote a story for the magazine, and he had a couple ideas of things that he wanted to do. And what he ended up doing was to get away from everything. He got on an Amtrak train and took a ride on the Amtrak train. And he ended up writing about taking the ride on the Amtrak train to write a story.
Yeah.
Which was that was brilliant. What a brilliant thing to do. So I thought that was kind of cool. Because we all know we're everybody is so busy these days. We're all busy, and we need to get away in order to actually get some stuff done. So
check it out.
There you go.
You can find it on the App Store, the Loop magazine. You can go to loopinsight.com and find out more about it there. Jim Dalrymple from the Loop. We did Amplified this morning, so if you want to hear more about what Jim said about Tim Cook and the Goldman Sachs conference, we were also joined by our friend Dave Mark, also from the Loop. So check out the three of us. Actually, it was a really good show this morning, so I definitely encourage you guys to check it out on the iTunes podcast section or go to loopinsight.com and check it out there. Jim, thanks for joining me, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Shawn.
Have a good night. See you.
Bye.
This is not Mac related at all, but it's an interesting story, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. I think it was about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, an organization announced that they were going to launch a manned mission to Mars, and they were looking for volunteers. 200,000 people applied, and they whittled the list down to, I think, 4. And there's a story on theguardian.com. If I die on Mars, meet the people on a mission to be the first on the red planet and stay there. What an interesting idea. What an exciting thought. A terrifying thought. For the most part, none of us know where we're going to die. We're all going to die on the planet Earth. We don't know where. These guys know where. They're going to die on Mars, or possibly on the way to Mars, or on the way down from the outer space into Mars in a very small plot of land. Now, it's interesting that the Guardian, I think they described this wrong. They say the first manned spaceflight to Mars, a one-way trip that's effectively a suicide mission. I disagree with that. It's not a suicide mission. It's a suicide mission from the point of view that you know you're going to die, but that's not what I would think of as being. This is the interesting thing about this is the motivations behind these people. And some of their motivations, you watch the video, are not, shall we say, pure. Is that a problem? Do you have to be pure of heart? You have to be Sir Galahad in order to go on this mission? I'd go. A lot of the folks that are involved in this, that are volunteering, the intimation is they have various issues here on Earth. They want to get away from this mundane planet, their mundane lives. Some of them want to do it to become famous. As the one guy says, in 200 years, no one's going to know who won the Super Bowl this year. But everyone will know who the first person on Mars will be. So he wants to be famous. Nothing wrong with that exactly. I was talking to someone this weekend. They said, but it'd be boring. I said, no, it wouldn't be boring. There's going to be 18 million experiments to be done. You're going to be working your ass off 18 hours a day. You're going to be talking to school children constantly, talking to scientists, doing rock studies and atmospheric studies and geological studies and mapping studies. Not to mention all the things you're going to be doing in the 2.5, 3 years it takes you to get from Earth to Mars. It's not going to be boring at all. Bring a book. It's very interesting when I mentioned this and brought this up to people and asked them. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with who you are here on Earth and who you are beholden is the wrong term. But if you've got close family and friends, everyone I've spoken to says, no, I'm not going. I've got kids. I'm a grandmother. I've got a wife. I've got a husband. But for folks like me who are single, I don't have a cat. I want a cat. Don't got a cat. There's nothing tying me to this planet that would prevent me from entertaining the idea of going to Mars. If I ain't applying, if someone comes to my door, knocks on the door and says, we've chosen you, I'd go. I'd absolutely go. Just the excitement, the exploration, certainly the fame. There's no doubt about that. But to be one of the first people in any field that helps push the human race forward, that enriches the lives of, if not our present generation, certainly our future generations. As I've said in the show before, we're going there anyway. You know, anyone who thinks that this blue marble is the only home human beings will ever have is either remarkably pessimistic or has no imagination. We're definitely going out into space eventually. We will definitely have colonies, if not colonized, terraformed other places at some point in human history. It's just the natural evolution of who we are as a species. That's what we do. We move outwards from where we are for any number of reasons. Whether it was Africans, the original Africans moving to Europe, whether it was the group of people that moved from Siberia across the Bering Strait to North America, whether it was pilgrims going from England to the New World. It's our nature to move forward. Settlers going from the East Coast to the West Coast and settling the West. It's what we do as human beings. We are by nature, I believe, explorers. We want to find out what's over the next hill, what's beyond the horizon, what's in the sky. So I'd love to be part of that. Would you? Would you go? If these people walked up to you and tapped you on the shoulder. Now, there's no guarantee this is going to happen. There's a lot of scientists who say this is not going to happen. They can't raise the money. I think the estimate is like $10 billion, but other scientists say, no, it's $100 billion. There's no way they're going to be able to raise the money. They're anticipating launch in 2024. Other scientists say there's no way they can meet that deadline. But let's assume this will happen in 2024, that they will have the money. Let's assume that it will be a safe spaceship. Let's assume that you'll land safely on Mars and start your new life there. Would you go? One of the things is you have to think about you're never going to eat a Big Mac ever again because the food's going to be awful. That's one thing I was thinking about. How are you getting food? Not just for a 2-year mission, but to live on Mars. There's a whole bunch of logistics that still have yet to be worked out. But let's assume it all gets worked out. Because remember, the original moon landing, the Apollo program, the Gemini program, the Mercury program, all that started when President John F. Kennedy said, we're going to the moon. And the guys at NASA went, wait, what? We can't go to the moon. We're not ready to go to the moon. And inside 10 years, Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. So if America could put their mind to it, and I think only America can, put their mind to it, this can happen. Whether it's corporate America, whether it's private enterprise, whether it's government, America can do this if America wants to do this. Would you go? On air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Brian Monroe says, Shawn, I've seen Star Trek, Star Wars, other shows and movies. There is no question we will explore and expand. Monty, we couldn't let Shawn go unless we could still do YML from the Red Planet. Well, there'd be an 8-minute delay. Internet access would be really slow. There'd be an 8-minute delay. I could go on it. Sherry says, what if the other people you're stuck with on the ship are assholes? Well, one of the things about the application is they test you in any number of ways, with the same kind of test they do for astronauts who go to the International Space Station. The same kind of test they do for anyone who goes in these kind of environments, and they weed people out based on that testing. But yeah, there's certainly possibility of another person being an asshole. So you got to deal with it. You won't have a choice. ArcSign, you can't try new wines or strange cheeses on Mars. Hiker PC, checks out the Kickstarter. Send Shawn to Mars. You guys are funny. You guys are funny. P. Boo says, see the book, Packing for Mars. Dave Mark told me about another book, too, called The Martians. Also about the engineering behind sending people to Mars. I think it's fascinating. I think it's something we should encourage, the discussion of it, the thinking of it. Because it's not in the public perception or mind right now. It's something we can do and we should do. Mark Mac says, why does anyone want to live on the moon? They do. People do want to live on the moon. But we've already been to the moon. That's why this group wants to go to Mars. They want to reach further than just the moon. They their perception is that the moon's been done. That let's reach further than just, quote unquote, just the moon. I got no problem with that. But that's what we all expected as kids. You know, in the late 60s and early 70s, during the height of the Apollo program, we fully expected 70s, so that's, 40 years now? We fully expected to have a colony on the moon by now, at the very least. I think as kids, we dreamt about that. We saw it in Popular Mechanics. We saw it in on animations, on the news. We saw it in our TV programs, and I mean, Space 1999 was a show about colonizing the moon. We fully expected that to happen. And then various political things happen in the States, because America will be the driver of this, whether it's through a corporate push or whether it's through a private enterprise push or some billionaire giving insane amounts of money for it. But this expertise is going to come from America. Other countries will get involved, but America has to be the driving force behind it. And you'd wish the government would be, with their resources and their connections. But if it has to be a private enterprise, okay, I'm fine with that. I don't care who sends us, but let's get going. Let's keep talking about it. Let's do it. Speaking of let's do it, one of those things that I harp on a regular basis is doing backups and photo organization. I mentioned on The Loop, I posted a story about the fact that it looks like Apple is removing the Genius Bar logo from the stores. Not all at once, but slowly but surely, they're removing that wonderful logo from behind the Genius Bars. And part of it makes sense, in the sense that the Genius Bars are no longer, in a lot of stores, just that spot at the back wall. So the logo is kind of out of place. There's no place to put the logo anymore that identifies the Genius Bar itself. So some of the stores are removing that logo. And it reminded me of a story. Sly was there. When Sly and I were in New York City for the opening of the Apple Soho store. And Sly loves telling the story of how Steve Jobs held the door open for her. It was very cute. I got a great shot of Jobs standing behind the Genius Bar. And I got really down low and shot Jobs looking up. He had his arms outstretched. He was kind of leaning forward on the Genius Bar. And I got down low and shot up. And I got the angle just perfect so that it said Genius over Jobs' head. And I posted that on The Loop. And someone rightfully said, "Oh, that sounds like a great shot. Could you show it to us?" And I said, "No." Because you know that thing about you should always have 2 backups in case of a hard drive crash? Well, many years I had a hard drive crash and no backups. I lost all of those photos. Every single one of those photos, gone. So great photos of Steve Jobs, of New York, of Paris, of the Washington Monument, gone forever. Because I had no backups. I had 0 backups of those photos. So one of the first things I talk about when I talk to people about photo organization is this is your opportunity to do a backup. You've got your card from your camera. The first thing you should be doing is taking that card and backing it up. Just the raw photos. So you get your little card, your little CF card or whatever it might be. You take that little card and back it up. Because if you don't, if you leave that card on your camera, what happens if you lose the camera? What happens if something happens to the camera? Then you lose the photos. Every day when I come back from shooting, even if I'm not going to look at the photos, the first thing I do is take the cards out and back them up. One set to my hard drive, so I can manipulate them. One set to an external drive, so they're backed up. But one set also to Flickr. And the reason why I do it to Flickr is because, as I've said many times in the show, Flickr offers 1 terabyte of data. Flickr is going to give you a whole terabyte of data that you can use for backing up your photos. If they're going to give it to you for free, why not use it? Why not go to Flickr if you don't have an account and open an account and upload your photos there. And you can upload your photos in the background and privately so that no one else can see your photos. Only you can see your Flickr photos. And I've got an automator action set up so that when I put anything in that folder, my backup folder, it automatically uploads stuff to Flickr. Or you can upload them to Dropbox or to Copy or wherever. iCloud, I don't care. Back them up somewhere. And I always mark them as originals. And what originals mean to me is that these are the raw photos. Unedited photos. So I've got 3 backups the night I do a photo shoot. The night of the shoot, I have at least 3 backups. 4 if you count the one on the card. So then the next thing I do when I get ready to start organizing and editing the photos, the first thing I do is, MacMan says, do they allow you to upload RAW? Yes, they do, MacMan. And P-Boo says, that's why I don't erase my SD cards. After I do my backups, P-Boo, then I'll erase the SD card because I'm going out shooting again. So the first thing I do is triage. I'll go through, you can even do it in the Finder if you'd like. Just go through the photos real quick and delete the obviously bad ones. Delete the ones I know are blurry or I didn't catch the moment or not composed very well. I can generally when I go out to shoot, I shoot about 200 to 300 photos on a casual basis. If I'm serious about it, I'll shoot 400 to 500. But for example, I went to the Academy Duello. It's a sword training academy here in Vancouver. Kind of cool. Not fencing, but actual swords, like battle swords, long swords and broadswords and stabs and sticks and all kinds of cool stuff. And so we went there on Friday night with my photography meetup group to shoot to shoot their performance team. It's kind of cool. So I went through those and immediately deleted the ones I knew I wasn't going to like. That just were blurry because it was inside and there's a lot of motion. Those guys were obviously swinging swords. So I immediately deleted the ones I knew I wasn't going to like. And generally, on Friday night, I shot, I think, 250. And I got it down to, the first pass triage, to 75 photos. So I threw away 175 that were just bad, photos I didn't like. So boom, right there, I've done some organization. The next thing I do is I will put them into a folder with the date. So 2015, 02, 06, underscore sword fighting. That's the folder those photos went into. So now I know if I ever need to do a search of, I wonder what photos I shot on this day, I just do a search for that date or that subject matter. So now I've got a folder on my hard drive that has that information on it. Then I open them up again, and now you import them into software. You notice I haven't imported anything into software yet. I haven't imported them into iPhoto or Aperture or Lightroom or Photoshop or anything like that. So the next thing you do is you take whatever software it is that is your favorite. For me, it's my personal favorite is Lightroom. And I open them up in Lightroom. I import them into Lightroom. And then I go through them again real quick. Now they're on a bigger screen, and I can do some real quick, fast edits and go, no, it's not going to come out. There's no point in me working on this one. I'll delete it. And that's where I get even more brutal. And that's one of the hardest things for a new shooter to get used to is being brutal with your edits. If there's any thought that this is not a good photo, delete it. Don't give it a second thought. Don't sit there and stare at it and go, I think maybe... No. If you don't immediately look at the photo and go, that could be good, delete it. Don't waste time on it, because you can waste hours and hours and hours trying to fix a bad photo. Oh, maybe if I just tweak this some more, crop it or sharpen it or. You'll go nuts doing that. Move on. Resolve to yourself to think, okay, I missed that shot. Why did I miss that shot? Well, I missed it because it was blurry, or I was in the wrong spot, or the composition wasn't right. Look at the picture and go, oh, yeah, I didn't get that one, and delete it. Don't flag it. Don't give it a rating. Don't give it keywords. Just don't waste any time on it. You got to be brutal with yourself. Got to be brutal. So that pass gets me down from the 75 that I imported probably to about 30 or 40 that I'll start tweaking. And then I'll tweak a bunch. I'll do a bunch of basic shots, tweaks to it. I'll fix the levels in all of them because if you're all in the same spot, it's all in the same room, so all the lights can be the same. So I'll fix the white balance issues, the exposure issues, and I'll do that across all of them. And then I'll go through and start tweaking again and throwing away again. Again, being brutal. Macman says, wish I'd taken my DSLR with me to the Ren Fair in Phoenix last week. The joust was awesome. Macman, if you've got a DSLR and you're going to a Ren Fair, come on, man. Take your damn DSLR. You kidding me? Macman says, I don't usually delete much. Space is cheap. I rate the best and process those. But the problem is if you don't delete them, you have a tendency to think you might be able to make something of them. I delete them to get rid of them. It's not a matter of space at all. It's a matter of I don't want to waste any time on them. I got lots of space too. I got terabytes and terabytes of data space. That's not the issue. Monty, my list of fix it and post stuff is so long it's not even funny. There's never enough time for post. Exactly. That's the issue. As beginners, we're not professional photographers. This isn't our job. As beginners, you've got maybe half an hour. Maybe you can squeeze in half an hour between putting the kids to bed and going to watch Survivor. You don't have a lot of time to waste in this stuff, so you've got to be brutal. You've got to be brutal with picking just your good shots. Don't post 17 pictures of the same thing. Post one. Don't keep 17 pictures of the same thing. Keep one. Throw the rest away. And that's even hard for me. I still struggle with that. I still struggle with the idea of, oh, you know what? I could spend some more time on this. No, just don't. So from the 30 or 40, I'll do some basic edits across them. Again, exposure and that kind of stuff. And then I'll look at them again. So now this is my, third time looking at the photos. And now I'm looking at them with an absolute critical eye of, is this a good photograph? Can I do something to make this photograph what I want to see, what I saw in my mind's eye, and what I want to send to somebody or post or I'm proud of that I can send to other people and have them look at it and go, yeah, that's a great photo. And from there, I can generally get down to about 10 photos. And then those 10 are the ones where I'll do some serious edits on, where I'll do some serious tweaking. So now rather than trying to edit 200 to 300 photos, I'm only editing 10. So make sure, ArcSign says, I won't take more pictures than I can keep. Lets me stay in the moment, enjoy the time and place I'm in. I'm not quite sure what you mean, ArcSign, when you say I won't take more photos than I can keep. Every photographer takes more photos than they can keep. I often tell the story of my friend Michelle in Portland, who used to be a photographer for Vogue and Elle. He'd shoot 1,000 photos on film, and they'd only keep one. I shoot 300 on digital and keep 10. You shoot, and then you look at them in software and see which ones you keep. Yeah, Monty says 1,000 on film. Wow, yeah, they would. That's not unusual. This was back in the 70s when he was living in Paris and shooting for Vogue and shooting for Elle magazine and shooting for Cosmo, those kinds of high-end fashion-y type magazines, Vogue and that kind of stuff. And he'd shoot between 1,000 and 1,200 shots in a day on film. Then he'd send those photos, not all of them, but he'd send the ones that he liked the best, which is probably 500, to the magazine. And the magazine would choose one. Even if they were doing a photo spread, they would choose 5. So they shot a lot that they never kept. Monty, that gets expensive. Yeah, well, that's why he got the big bucks. That's why he got the big bucks. So that's my process. You have to find your own. You can use mine. It's not secret. But you've got to find your own to be efficient. Even if you were a pro, you've got to be efficient to do it. But you're not. You're a beginning photographer. And you want to learn how to get better at photography. And the way to get better is to be efficient. To learn your camera, like I always say, learn your camera, learn photography tips and tricks and techniques and composition and all that kind of stuff. But then when it gets in the computer, you've got to learn how to do that fairly quickly and efficiently too. So if you have any questions about any of this stuff, please let me know. Send me an email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. As always, I love getting emails from you guys. I'm just going to go through the emails and see what emails I do have. Rick Rowe-Kemper says, a few weeks back, you mentioned the name of a Canadian rock band. It may have been on Amplified or Your Mac Life. I was curious if they are on Spotify. Love Amplified with you as the host, and your voice, tone, inflection, laugh all make me keep listening since the Jay Curtis days. You should be reading Audible books. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate that. I'm not exactly sure which Canadian rock band you were referring to, Rick, but Rush, maybe? Spirit of the West. Tragically Hip might have been another one. There are all kinds of Canadian rock bands. I'm not sure the reference either here in the show or Amplified, so if you can give me a little more of a hint, that would help to be able to figure out which band you're talking about. Well, those are 2 big Canadian rock bands. And if you haven't heard of them before, Rush is a great, what they call prog rock. And Tragically Hip is a good alternative pop rock kind of band that you could check out. Scott Thrift from Sydney, Australia. I thought you might be interested in possibly talking about what I'm calling app creep. I live on my iPhone, and I've noticed that more and more apps are breaking off parts and turning them into standalone apps. Facebook is now basically 3 apps: the main app, Messenger, and Groups. Apple's been doing it for years. Podcast is a standalone app, etc. I can understand this makes apps smaller and therefore a quicker download, but overall I find it annoying. I now have additional apps that I have to keep up to date, monitored, and chew through my data. I use a prepaid mobile plan. What really annoys me is when I'm used to an app, suddenly I now have to learn a new app. Would love to be good to hear your opinion and that of other listeners. It's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, Scott. It is some companies like Facebook do it for not readily apparent reasons. Some do it because of demand from users. And you can never satisfy all users with all things. Some users want podcasts as a separate app, which is why separate podcast apps are so popular. Some users want to separate Facebook from Messenger and Groups. I do, so I can delete Messenger and never use it. So you're kind of caught on the other end of the scale, where these companies want these things, but you don't. Companies will say, well, our customers do. And you'll say, well, I'm your customer, and you're not doing it for me. It's not necessarily that makes apps smaller and a quicker download, because it doesn't really matter to the developer. You're only going to download it once. So that's really not much of an issue. But I certainly understand where you're coming from. Marcus Mendez down there in Brazil. Hey, Shawn, listening to yesterday's YML. The Radio Shack discussion reminded me of the experience I had with them when I visited New York in 2009. I went to the Fifth Avenue Apple Store as a proper tourist in New York does, had a blast there, poked around the computers, played with the iPhones and iPods. A couple hours later, my then-girlfriend went inside a beauty store. I saw a Radio Shack a few meters ahead, and I thought, okay, I'll go there and buy stuff while she buys her stuff. I entered the store and saw a bunch of netbooks lined up. I got curious to see their baby specs and decided to check them out. I go up to one, proceed to see and check the system settings. Suddenly, this Radio Shack worker comes up to me and yells, "What the heck are you doing?" I reply, nothing, I'm just looking at, he interrupts me, looking at what? You can't do that, don't touch the computers. At which point, I'd just leave, as nothing positive would come out of this great exchange in customer service history. I remember laughing at the difference between the freedom of walking into an Apple store and being allowed to just play with any computer, any device in there, contrasted to getting yelled at inside the other store for wanting to find out more about a computer they had on display. I thought I'd share this, and since I have you, I'm really enjoying Amplified with you in it, never mind the idiots complaining about it. Oh, I don't mind idiots complaining about Amplified. I have no problem with that. Isn't it fun? And that's one of the reasons why the Apple Store is so popular. Because Apple, by the way they operate, encourage you to go in there and poke around. Because Apple doesn't care. Go in and delete stuff if you want. Because every night, Apple wipes all those computers. Apple wipes all those iPads and iPhones and everything and reinstalls the stuff. So every morning, it's a brand new, fresh computer. So Apple's got a system, a process down that says, yeah, go ahead. Don't destroy things. We'll certainly play around and write notes to yourself and check webpage. Sly and I, and I have to bring you in on this, Sly. Sly, my co-conspirator in this one. We used to go, in Canada, we have future shops, which are similar to American Best Buys. And we'd go to Best Buys, and on the Macintoshes, we'd open up, at that time, Internet Explorer, and make Your Mac Life the homepage on all the computers we could find. So whenever somebody opens up the browser, the first thing you saw was Your Mac Life. Kind of sneaky of us, wasn't it? Yoram Snur. Sorry, Yoram, I'm butchering your name. Your call with Jim reminded me of my first visit to Radio Shack in 1995. I came to buy a 50-cent electronic switch. The lady at the register asked me for my name. Now, it's an Israeli name, so it took her about 90 seconds to type Y-O-R-A-M, and another 45 seconds for my 4 letters last name, S-N-I-R. I was happy and getting ready to pay. Then she asked me for the address. I left the switch on the counter and left. I visited once more in 2009 in Radio Shack. Radio Shack always did a really awful job of explaining why they wanted that information. Because there is no good explanation to a customer. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. The reason why they wanted it was to sell your data to other companies. To use that data to send you Radio Shack catalogs. To sell to third-party marketers so you can get more junk mail. Now, either Radio Shack never explained that to their employees, or their employees wouldn't tell you that. I asked every single time. I was curious to know what they'd say. Why do you need this information? Whenever somebody asks me for personalized information like that, my address, my phone number, my first question is why? Why do you need that information? Why do you need my name? I'm buying a battery. I'm paying cash. Why do you need any information from me whatsoever? Part of it's my natural suspicion. Part of it's curiosity is what the company's going to use this for. And thirdly, it's the curiosity of what is the employee going to say. I'm not giving you the data regardless. You're not getting my phone number, my name, and my home address in order to sell me a frickin' battery. Part of the downfall of Radio Shack, and this is a small part, but certainly part of it was, they just annoyed the hell out of you. They just pissed you off. So you avoided going in there. It was also, the inability to join the 21st century and become a store you wanted to go into. It became a hobbyist store. And they didn't seem to recognize there were fewer and fewer do-it-yourself hobbyists when it came to electronics. Sly says, you did a lot of things at stores, Shawn. It's true. True. Brian Monroe, loved your rant from last week about Radio Shack. Thanks. Yeah, Brian says, Radio Shack was an annoying store. Monty, what Radio Shack never did a good job of doing was training the employees of what to do when someone said no. We were told to just move on if someone refused to give name, address, and phone number. But we got more commission if we did get good name, address, phone number data on our tickets. Now, I didn't know that, Monty. I didn't realize that the store employees got commission from that information, which is why none of them ever gave me a good explanation or an honest explanation. You know what? Maybe if some employee said to me, you know what, dude, I get a little extra money for this. I didn't give them the fake information. I said, my name is Monty Freeman. I live in Atlanta. Yeah, I didn't know that the employees get cash for that or spiffs for that. Sherry says Michael's does that too. Michael's, I don't know if you're familiar with it, is a kind of an arts and crafts store. Michael's does that too. You don't need my postal code to sell me a crochet hook. Thank you very much. Exactly. Absolutely. What are you going to give me for that information? Is what I always ask. If you want my personal information, what are you going to give me for it? Now, maybe if a company says, we'll knock 10% off the price if you give us your address. All right, maybe I'll do it. Depends on, what the product is. If it's a crochet hook, no. But if I'm buying stuff and it costs $50, you'll give me 10% off? Maybe I'll give you the information. If it's for a company who I want to get further information from. But companies just don't explain that stuff very well. Or they will say no once we find out some of the sleazy things you're going to do with the data. So, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining me here on this Wednesday evening. As always, again, if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to mention or talk about, send me email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. It was great to see our good friend IRC Babe Sly back in the chat room. Thank you, Sly, for being here. And hopefully you're feeling better and not being a snot monster. Her words, not mine. Not being a snot monster anymore. Until next week, as always, folks, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!